of the screen, we did see New Zealand finish with the 15 compared to South Africa, who finished with the 23. They will be the champions of the under-20s. England, they knocked out the defending champs earlier on in the comp, and they are reaping the rewards here as they do get themselves, like I said, the first title win in around the 12 years. But we have got two guests, ladies and gents, Vik and Wern. They also did cover this game. It was talked about that one of us were going to be very happy at the end of this contest, and I think there's going to be a couple very happy South Africans that I'm about to add into this live stream. Vik and Wern, mates, how are you going? Big smile on the face, happy days for the junior box, thoroughly deserved from the way that they played throughout this competition.
I don't know what to say. I'm at a loss. It's not often I'm at a loss of words. But listen here. No, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the New Zealanders on a great game of rugby. They tried very hard. I'm so proud of the young box. You cannot imagine. But I want, we are biased. We're not like you. You're very neutral. We're biased. What do you think about the ref?
It wasn't the greatest game we've seen in terms of some of the decisions, I will say. But at the same time, I think both sides made their individual errors enough that it did cost them kind of anyway. Like, we saw a lot of handling errors throughout the game. And yes, maybe a couple calls could have gone a different way. But at the same time, I don't think either side were clinical enough to fully, like New Zealand, that line out that they won when it was the perfect chance to be able to get an attack going and giving away that penalty. Or, for South Africa, when they were right on the verge of scoring and Hassim P goes round the side and then just a player in the scrum grabs the halfback. Like, it's those little things that, like, to be fair, you do expect it from the under-20s a little bit because there's that lack of experience at times. But, yeah, I think that it wasn't as smooth as it could have been for this match.
No, I must admit, look, we had a big discussion on our channel. We had a poll out there. Should it have been a red card or not? At the beginning, I didn't know that it was going to be a 20-minute red card. So I was quite upset because, I mean, that young player from New Zealand must be totally distraught. I mean, in a final, and I mean, it's the second final now in a row that has happened to New Zealand. What was it, Kane last time with the main box? I felt, especially for such a young player.
And I didn't think it was a red card.
At the beginning, when I thought it was, I think, a very dark yellow, but I wouldn't have gone with red. These are young men. There was no malice behind it. There was no on purpose or something like that. I was happy to hear that. I only noticed later that it's going to be a 20-minute red card. So I was happy for that young man because he must be feeling. He must have been feeling totally terrible there. But I did feel the ref kind of put himself too much in the center of this game. I think. But look, as you can say, it wasn't a great game of rugby from being clinical or anything like that. It just lived off the excitement. It lived totally off the excitement.
And I think that. Sorry, what was that word?
No, Karen.
No, you go for it.
I just think the Springboks defense was great, especially that about 5 minutes New Zealand was on the line and just didn't get it over. They weren't just clinical as
well. They do say defense wins championships, and I think today, I don't think the offense of both teams was clinical enough, but I think the South African defense, they won it for us. The defense won it for us.
Yeah, and that's the same as what happened in that game up against England as well, in those closing moments when they needed to turn it on. Like, I would say 100% best defense we've seen from this junior box side all throughout this year, because every single time, like New Zealand getting close and all but over, then forced back a couple meters and, just using that physicality. And it seemed to be, as soon as that advantage came, that was when New Zealand panicked a little bit and went, we have to throw something elaborate here.
Yes.
And that was when the knock-on would come and then they'd go back. But South Africa would have well and truly been happy with New Zealand just taking the 3 in that case when they had been attacking for so long. But, yeah, many lineouts not quite going the way that either side would have liked for this contest. Those early steals. Because we've never seen in this competition anyway, a side challenge the South African lineout the way that New Zealand did right from the get-go. And I feel like Nebeleli was showing a little bit of the signs of a few nerves as well with the fact that it was so competitive.
Well, man, what is it? Out of the first 3 lineouts, New Zealand stole 2 of them. Yeah. I mean, I was worried there at the beginning. I thought, whoa, this is not a good. But they cleaned up the act on the lineups later. I did think when it came to the scrums, they were dominant, the Springboks. They used the scrums really well.
But what I must say is New Zealand had a lot of penalties.
They didn't take
the 3, which the Africans always took the 3.
I always think in a final. I always say in a final,
take the 3.
If you can get points, easy points on the board, take them, get the ball back off the kickoff. I think New Zealand made a few mistakes. It could have been a lot closer, because had they taken the 3 points when they could have, you automatically put a little bit more pressure on the South Africans, because the scoreboard kind of narrows. But we were always there with that 8-point difference. And with that 8-point difference, they've got to score twice.
Exactly. And I do think
that helps.
Even Vusi Moyo at times, it seemed to be South Africa were opting away from those 3-pointers, which honestly, with the ill discipline of New Zealand, they probably could have got, 12, 15 extra points just ticking it over and slowly building that pressure. But I think that was also down to being a little bit cautious about New Zealand's attack. I mentioned about it in the second half. There were times where both of these sides were playing not to lose rather than to win. They didn't want to go for that big mistake. And when you're a young player, of course, you don't want to be that guy that throws that big interception pass that Cheswell Euster runs onto. But
I mean, can you imagine how that young New Zealander must feel tonight? The guy that got that yellow, that red card. They go back to the hotel. They're in the bus. I mean, if it was me, you're trying to hide in the bus. You don't want any attention. You know how bad he must feel. And I feel for the kids, man. There has to be a winner. And look, it was our dream final. We did want to play New Zealand. I thought there was the 2 best teams in the tournament. There are a lot of upsets on the other results today. France losing to Argentina. Didn't expect that, but now I'm proud of it. Look, 6 months ago, let's be honest, 6 months ago, nobody thought the South African under-20s could win this competition. We were not in that situation. I don't know what happened in the last 6 months or in the last 3 months. I don't know what's happened, but they've come of age, these guys, and
play fantastic.
And listen, we needed this one. We needed this one because our junior rugby has not been very successful, and I think this can give a good kick in South Africa also for the young players to come through. Yeah.
Well, the amount of guys from this team that we will see go into the Springboks within the next kind of 5 years, or even into the Currie Cup and URC sides, we'll see them slowly feeding back in. But I think Riley Norton, the way that he's kind of spoken for the South African side all throughout as the skipper, like he seems like a player a lot more wise than his age, and he's got a bright future, perhaps in the bigger games for the bigger sides, perhaps the captaincy role in there too. So if you had to give someone a man of the match in this contest, that's something that I hadn't even thought about. To be honest, I was just hoping to get through that 80 minutes. Because, looking at that Australia-England game, they had over 100 points. So I was thinking we were in for a high score and back and forth.
Yeah, where did that come from Australia?
Yeah, no idea. But the thing is, though, they probably played how people thought they would play up against South Africa in that first match after the two sides met in the Under-20 Rugby Championship.
Yes.
And they just didn't in that first contest. They had the close game with Scotland. And I do think that England's match up against South Africa, that was the end of the English in this comp. It just seemed to be from there they never quite got to that next gear, because they even had the close game up against Aussie in that group stage, didn't they, as the next matchup when the two sides played. But I think we need a few man of the match nominations. So we'll go for a top 5, I would say, in this contest. So Hasim Peed's got to be in there somewhere, I would think.
Yes.
I think he's
with the way he was able to play.
I think he's the player of the tournament.
Yep.
Definitely. I don't think I wouldn't have him as my player of the match. These shirts are nice and shiny right now. We got them in the post today. It worked out.
Perfect timing.
And the South Africans played in the way. No, me, I'm going with the kicker. I'm going with the flyer. Moyo.
Okay.
I think he held his nerve. I mean, it is a final. You're young. I would go then, but Riley Norton, you get a shout out from me as well. I thought, my adopted son also didn't play too bad. Cheswell Euster, but no, I would give it to Moya or to Riley Norton.
Moya for me. Yeah, Moya for me.
Yeah, I think it's hard to deny a guy who did take so many crucial moments, like even that kicking percentage in the early stages of the game. Just prior to that match, we saw South Africa versus Georgia with Sasha sitting 1 from 5 off the kicking tee. Had that been a close game, which of course it wasn't expected to be, but maybe that could have been something that was a talking point. But I also do think that one Dele Mnglaba in that number 8 jersey did look pretty handy throughout that contest, scoring that early try. And then, I mean, Klekana, he's a big bloke, but this game, I think New Zealand did very well shutting down his physicality and also forcing those errors. Yeah. I think that, see, the biggest concern for me was if Klekana broke the line and he just had Stanley Solomon in front of him. I thought that was about the biggest mismatch.
But for me, he was one of the, for me, if I was giving somebody in the New Zealand team man of the match, I think Solomon was very good.
Yeah. Someone who didn't really perform for the Kiwis was Frank Wainuku. I don't know whether or not it was that head knock earlier on in the game, because he did take a nasty shot, and from there he never really found his feet, I don't think. Definitely for a guy who has the most clean breaks out of anyone in the whole competition. We didn't really see it fed to him as much. But like you said, Solomon was strong from the back and needed to be, because South Africa, they didn't get that same classic break of the line that we've seen them have in their first other matches.
But I got a question for you, Solomon. Is he physically going forward in the future? Is he physically strong and big enough to play that role in senior rugby?
That's a very good question, because I think it's one critique that he gets quite a bit for his career, because he is with the under-20 Hurricanes, I believe, at this point in time. But I just don't know whether or not, just at this point in time, they would look to go to the next level with him, because I'm not actually too sure what his height is. Because, of course, a lot of these guys can still bulk up a little bit if needed. But Stanley Solomon, you know, he's 80 kgs and he's 1.74 meters tall. He's actually taller. Wait, no, how tall am I? No, he's shorter than me. Never mind. I had to do the maths there. 5'9". So how tall's Damian McKenzie, I wonder? Because I feel like he's pretty much the biggest example.
He's kind of a
small man.
A Damian McKenzie lookalike, yes.
So McKenzie is apparently 78 kgs. I don't buy that. I think he would have bulked up a little bit since that measurement. But he's 1.75, so only 1 centimeter taller than Stanley Solomon.
Yes, he's got a chance,
Yeah,
and the thing is, he's also young, so he might still be growing too.
Yes, he can still pick up some weight, because if you're looking at those in those positions, I mean, who will play that position for New Zealand? We'll get into that, New Zealand, France a little bit later, but you're looking at a guy, Will Jordan. I mean, Will Jordan looks like a flipping giant compared to Solomon if you put them next to each other, you know. But, you know, you can make up in other ways. Are you elusive? Are you quick? Are you tricky? There's always different ways to look at it.
And he is.
And what he has, he's got a heart, that kid.
Yeah. And it seems to be those smallest players are the ones who take the biggest shots and get back up. And I think that's just from the younger age groups of knowing, like, the big guys are going to run straight at you. But if you've got that technique, you know, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. If you get them around the bootlaces, that's the one thing that you're always taught. But yeah, certainly some big blokes across these two sides. Like, you're looking at Klekana, who's a good solid 120 kgs, or maybe not quite that big, but he's got to be up there. You've got Caleb Woodley, who's one of the heavier guys for New Zealand. Mosisi Basson, I didn't see a huge amount of him throughout this game, surprisingly, in that loose forward trio. And I thought that this was going to be the type of game that we saw him really come to the forefront. Jaden Sarr had a big game for the Kiwis in that number 5 jersey, getting those steals.
I said he was going to be, in our preview at the beginning of the show, I said he was going to be good. I mean, we put out a poll, and asked any of these 46 players that were involved today, does anybody see any of these 46 players at the World Cup in 2027? I say no.
No.
Yeah. I say no, but we're like about 60% of the people saying yes. Do you see any of these 46 young men that were on the field today at a Rugby World Cup in Australia in 2027?
The thing is, Rassie had a varsity cup guy in his wider squad, so I wouldn't put it past Erasmus to throw a guy in there. If Faf de Klerk's not going to be at that next World Cup, maybe Hussey Pete is the apprentice. The other option, of course, like the problem that they've got for Vusi Moyo is he looks like he's going to be an outstanding player with a lot of composure and a lot of control of the game. But how many fly halves are in his way at the moment? You've got Pollard, who's still got a good few years in front of him, Labok, Sasha Feinberg, Ngume Zulu, Valimza to a certain extent. You've got Jordan Hendricks if he's looking at their 10, although I think a lot of people would pick Moyo over him at this point in time. But then that is, of course, a little bit hard to judge because we haven't seen Moyo in that kind of URC environment. But yeah, one thing that has stood out all throughout this comp is just the way that he's been able to control the way that the South Africans are playing. Those kicks in behind, sometimes a little bit risky, like that cross kick that didn't quite turn into the chance, but then also, just spotting space, that vision, something that these young guys seem to be pretty good at. But for New Zealand, I don't think any of these guys will be at that World Cup in 2027. I think 2031, big possibility, but just a little bit too early for a lot of these Kiwi guys. Like normally those standout fellas, I think a majority of them kind of got taken out last year and put into the kind of ABs and Super Rugby environment.
So how are you? As I mean, look, of course, world champions, but loving it. This morning, New Zealand against France. What were your thoughts on that one?
I think that New Zealand once again got a little bit of a shock from the French in terms of the way that they came out, but France always said that the third match was their goal. In terms of no matter what happened in the first two, that was more of just we'll play every player that we can and see who's going to go the best. But all of the difference was made by having Gilliard and having Villiers and Feku back into that French team. And New Zealand with that late change, no Jacobson, it seemed like it took a little bit longer for Karefi to find his feet at 7 with Savia moving to the number 8. But overall, like as much as people have been annoyed at France for this series, I do think that New Zealand have learned quite a bit from it. And if it had been the strongest French side, perhaps Robinson wouldn't have been willing to make those switches in Test match number 3. And maybe New Zealand could have lost one or two of those matches because they have been far from their best, but they've still been, I always say, if you still win even though you're having mistakes, like you've done pretty well.
That's the mark of champions.
Exactly right. And I do think New Zealand, Geordie Barrett showed his class off the bench. Anyone who was doubting him as the number 12, I mean, you got to chuck him back in, don't you, after that one. But, yeah, what did you guys think of it from an outside perspective? Were you expecting, I guess, a little bit more from New Zealand, or with the amount of changes, did that kind of go the way that you expected?
Put it this way. I said to Vern, I said, if I was marking the two teams out of 10, New Zealand won the game, and I would have given them maybe a 6.5, maximum 7.
Yeah,
I would have given the French an 8 because I think they did more with less.
Yeah,
and the New Zealanders, I thought New Zealand should easily win this game. I mean, I did like the French fullback Leo Barre. I thought he played very well. Yes, the changes that short where Sabaya's got to go to the 8 because just before the game something happens to a player and gets injured. That hurt. And I can understand exactly why your coach is not that Chiefs combination of Ratima and McKenzie is not as good as when Roy God plays.
Yeah, I think that New Zealand did find that gap in terms of not having Roygaard. And I also do think, of course I have to watch it back a little bit, but a lot of New Zealand's backline, one critique that McKenzie gets is he does drift sideways, and New Zealand at times were moving sideways rather than straight through. And yeah, it's a tricky one because, when you've got a player like Will Jordan and he's not really existing in about 20 or 30 minutes of the game, you're doing something wrong because the more that man touches the ball, the more tries you are going to be able to score. But yeah, intriguing. The Rugby Championship, of course, around the corner. Rassie, he'll probably announce his side next week or maybe even this week, to be fair. He just loves an early announcement when it comes to that side.
People.
Yeah. Do you think there is any chance he would do the biggest troll maneuver he could and announce it during that Australia versus British and Irish Lions second test? Surely not, right?
I wouldn't put it past him, because Rassie, I don't know how good you know your American football. Rassie, kind of like the Dallas Cowboys. He likes the Springboks to be in the news all the time, and I wouldn't put it past him. But I think he's got a few selection headaches because there are a lot of some players that have shown, new players that I think, especially what is he going to do on the scrum half position? He's not going to take 4 scrum halves when we go down to New Zealand to play you guys. He'll take 3. So which 3 is he going to take? There's a lot of questions. What does he do with the fullbacks? What is with Willie Leroux? Is Willie Leroux done? I think he's got a lot of tough decisions to make. Sometimes, and I think because they're all tough, I think he's got them all in his head. He knows what he wants to do. But the longer you wait, you know how it is. I mean, I know coaching sports, the longer you wait to make decisions, should I start thinking about it. I think he just wants to rip the Band-Aid off, get the plaster off. And I think he'll come out with that squad quite early.
Yeah, and as soon as he gets that squad announced, of course, the benefit that they've got this year is they're at home for those first 2 matches, whereas last year having to head to Australia. So, they can gel, I think, South Africa at the moment. They've got a brilliant squad. And the fact that you can put out an all uncapped front row and still win scrums, I think is a massive bonus for Rassie. And, it is a deep amount of depth that South Africa rugby has got. And sometimes, I say the amount of depth is a good thing, but in Rassie's case, he almost has a bit too much. It might be a bit more tricky for him. But I've just seen the time. It is currently, I believe, 8 minutes away from the time that you boys are head into your boxing, isn't it? For Dubois versus Usyk.
Yeah, but listen, let's.
I just want to one thing. I want to know your opinion on the Lions game.
Australia looked like a side that had played 1 match together for this season.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I do think that the second test match hopefully will be a lot more competitive. Australia got better as the match wore on. And I do think that the Lions got a lot more ill-disciplined as it got closer to the 80 minutes. But there'll be a couple changes, I would say, for the Wallabies. I think McDermott has to start in the 9 jersey with that impact.
Oh, thank you. Somebody that agrees with us.
That's what we said.
We said he was phenomenal. When he came on, the game changed.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just seemed to be even that little snipe around the side of the breakdown. Like Gordon tried it a couple of times, but the Lions did shut him down instantly. So I think you need that grittiness of Tate McDermott. And then alongside that, Harry Potter, I think, was a little bit lackluster out on the wing. But then at the same time, they didn't get it out to him. I love the puns. We got a lot of those on the stream. I assume you got a few as well.
Of course.
But
what do you think?
Of course,
I have one problem with the Wallabies. I have one problem with them. I think they got a lot of young talent. I don't like this whole coaching situation. You know that coach, Schmid, he's gone.
Yeah.
And Kisses, I can't understand the thinking of, if I was now, if the same situation was in South Africa and I knew we lose, our coach is going to be gone in 2026, I want him to be gone right now.
Yeah.
There's 2 years to World Cup. What are they waiting for?
The thing is, with Australia, you know what that is also the same scenario as? Eddie Jones. When that took place only about a year or so ago, when Eddie Jones was like, I'm not in talks with Japan, mate. And then it was announced Eddie Jones signing with Japan at the end of the year. And, as a team, I think even a couple of the players mentioned it, it's very hard to play for a coach who's not playing for you. And in that scenario, Joe Schmidt, he's done quite a bit for Aussie Rugby. They had a competitive November internationals not too long ago, but Australia Rugby's in a bit of trouble, and they need at least 1 win of this Lions tour, because if they don't get it and they don't beat the All Blacks in one of their 2 matches, it can't get much worse for them, but they just need something big soon, I would say. And I mentioned about it on a live stream, and I'm not sure whether or not I should repeat it, but I said that if South Africa don't end the Eden Park Test record, it would actually do pretty well for the Wallabies to do it, to get that big win and end that streak, just to give them some sort of confidence. As a Kiwi, I thought I was going to get shot through a window or something, just, from the outside. You got to be careful there.
Yeah. For me, I'm telling you now, for me, at the moment, with all the team is one thing, but the decision making behind the scenes there from Australia are kind of like the Southern Hemisphere Wales.
They are. Unfortunately, yeah. And
That's
Wales, there's the thing with the Welsh, and that is it can't get much worse for them. But I think for the Wallabies,
Can get worse.
there's still a little bit worse to go. But, you know, they have to be competitive.
Do I see a little bit of New Zealand coming through there, hoping it gets worse?
No, I want a competitive Wallabies. Once again, I got to watch out for the snipers, but I wouldn't mind the Wallabies in the next couple of years winning the Bledisloe, just to add a bit more back to that kind of competition. But it's got to be 3 matches. What's this 2-match rubbish? You know, get 3 matches. Don't have it that one team wins and then straight away the decision or the series is gone. You know, if New Zealand win the first or draw the first, like, it just seems to take away from what used to be. Like, don't get me wrong, Australia lost it many times in a row and it got very repetitive. But they still, you know, you got to give them a bit of a chance. And yeah, that's my
New Zealand
rant.
play with 13 guys.
Maybe. Oh, I mean, to be fair, the under 20s are doing that enough, aren't they? How many yellow cards? I think 8 throughout the competition for the under 20s from New Zealand.
I think the South Africans also got a lot of yellow cards, but I think that is just common with young players. You're gonna, you know, you're gonna make us mistakes and stuff like that. But hey, no, I think it was a fantastic rugby day. Are you done for today? Or are you going to do USA against England?
I'm not going to do USA England, but I'll probably watch it just to see what's happening there. What time does the main event of the boxing take place?
It should start soon.
It's already 11 o'clock. It should start soon.
It's got to start soon because they've got the stupid rule in England that at Wembley Stadium has to be emptied by 11 o'clock British time. They're not allowed to have people there later on. So that is basic. So it's got to start really soon, you know. But it's not on yet. It's not on yet. But no, I thought it was a fantastic rugby day today.
Yeah. And I think that today, it's probably a nice way to end off on what has been a hectic July international schedule. Like, a lot of the results we've seen have been expected. And don't get me wrong, these ones were as well. But we seem to see some slightly, I would say, better rugby throughout this round compared to the previous ones. And I think that is because the Wallabies tour or the British and Irish Lions matches have now started. So it's kind of got a little bit more serious for those two teams. And, you know, the hype of the British and Irish Lions tour, there were so many Lions supporters in the stands at Suncorp. In fact, I think there was more red than there was yellow.
There was more red. But I got one more question for you.
We got to go.
And then we got to go. I got one more question for you.
All right.
Okay. The New Zealand international season is now ended for a while until we get to the Rugby Championship. South Africa the same, Argentina the same. Is it an advantage that the Wallabies are going to be still playing for the next 2 weeks? Are they going to be better maybe in shape or in form? Or is it better that our nations have got a little bit of a break? Because straight after this, basically, it's not long, and then the Wallabies got to come to South Africa.
Yeah, I think that there will be a lot of fatigue for the Wallabies heading into those South African matches because there will be injuries. We will see them in those next 2 games probably go down a little bit. But at the same time, I do think that from the rust that we've seen from certain sides, having games recently can be actually one of your biggest strengths. But of course, Rassie, he'll be training the guys and having drills and everything like that, trying to simulate the matches, getting them all ready to go. But yeah, I think that Australia, no matter what, like heading into South Africa, that's going to be a tough couple matches for a side that is either going to be, like, even if, let's say, for instance, just by argument's sake, 2-1, somehow they win the British and Irish Lions tour, like, that can only carry you so far. And as soon as you go to South Africa at Ellis Park, that's going to be brutal either way. So, you know, I hope it's competitive, but South Africa at the moment, they seem like they're doing a lot right, not just in the seniors, but also for the under-20s, and it's intriguing. Very exciting. But I will let you blokes go because I assume that you're very close to the main event. Anyone who does want to pop in for the boxing, of course, Dubois taking on up against Usyk. Be sure to check out Wern and Vik, or Vik and Wern, depending on what way around you do prefer it. So be sure to go over and check out their channel as well. But nonetheless, thank you very much, boys, for coming on. What we will do is I will click the remove button.
I'll contact you at the beginning of next week because we are setting it up that we can invite you to one of our rugby shows, and then we'd like to invite you.
All right, sounds awesome. Oh, well, enjoy the boxing and enjoy the rest
of
the evening
as
well.
Have a wonderful evening and get some sleep, man.
I will at some stage. Oh, well. I'll see you guys later. See ya. Right, ladies and gents, The end score in this contest, 23 points to 15. The South African under-20s getting themselves a victory. We did